Something I didn't think I'd say, Max, at the end of the pit lane earlier. You are now race leader.
Congrats.
Did you know that Max Verstappen almost lost his most brilliant weekend due to a technical decision that broke all the paddock rules? What began as an absolute disaster at Interlagos ended up revealing one of the boldest strategic moves in modern Formula One. But the most revealing moment didn't happen on the track, but on the radio. Before we continue, leave your opinion in the comments. Was Red Bull brave or simply desperate to break parc firm before the race? Because what happened between Verstappen, his engineer Gianpiero Lambiase, and Laurent Mekies completely changed the course of that Grand Prix. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this analysis, we're going to break down the true meaning of the most talked about radio message of the year. The message that transformed frustration into strategy and chaos into one of the most improbable podium finishes of the 2025 season. The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix marked a turning point in the relationship between Max Verstappen, his engineer Gianpiero Lambiase, and Red Bull's new technical management under Laurent Mekies. From the very first minutes of the weekend, everything indicated that the team was out of sync with the Interlagos circuit. The RB21 showed signs of instability in every medium-speed corner, with a clear lack of traction in the middle sector. Verstappen, accustomed to extracting the maximum from even an unbalanced car, found himself limited by a car that simply wasn't responding. His elimination in Q1, purely due to pace, was a psychological blow for a team accustomed to dominating. There were no mechanical failures, no penalties, just a car incapable of generating the necessary downforce. Verstappen's frustration was audible over the radio, with direct and unfiltered messages. Lambiase tried to keep the tone under control, but the driver knew the weekend was slipping through his fingers. It was then that Mekies made the decision that would completely change the course of the race. Breaking parc firm meant a declaration of war against the technical regulations and, at the same time, a public admission that Red Bull had lost its way in the setup. They decided to restart everything, change the suspension configuration, install a new power unit, and rebuild the aerodynamic balance from scratch. This measure condemned them to start from the pit lane, but it opened the possibility of rewriting the script. The risk was monumental, but the team understood that there was nothing to lose and everything to gain. Red Bull worked tirelessly on reconfiguring the car, seeking to restore its lost stability and grip. By dawn, the RB21 was no longer the same car. And in that desperate gamble lay the seed of one of the most spectacular comebacks of the season. On Saturday, the atmosphere at Red Bull was a mixture of disbelief and tension. Leaked radio transmissions from qualifying revealed a frustrated Verstappen. That's when Laurent Mekies intervened from the technical team. His message, relayed by Lambiase, was captured live by FOM cameras and shifted the tone of the weekend. "It was tough, Max, but the weekend is still long. We know we're not where we want to be, so let's keep fighting together." That sentence marked a profound change in the team's internal narrative. For the first time in a long time, Red Bull wasn't speaking from a position of technical superiority, but from one of shared resilience. Mekies understood that the moment didn't require data or strategies, but rather restoring confidence. His intervention had an immediate effect. Verstappen toned down his subsequent messages, and Lambiase regained emotional control of the communication. What began as a monologue of frustration transformed into a focused dialogue. From that point on, the radio ceased to be a space for complaints and reverted to the tactical tool it had always been between them. On Sunday, the tone changed completely. From the first lap, communication was fluid, precise, and almost mathematical. Every exchange between Verstappen and Lambiase revealed a rebuilt mutual understanding. When the Dutchman suffered a puncture in the early laps, the team's reaction was immediate. There was no doubt, no hesitation. Lambiase reported the problem and executed the pit stop under the virtual safety car with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the chaos on the track. As the race progressed and a comeback became possible, the radio communications displayed a different emotional rhythm, firmness, focus, and a tone of absolute technical respect. At one point, when Verstappen took the lead, Lambiase broke protocol with a spontaneous remark. "I never thought I'd be saying this, Max, but from the pit lane you're now leading the race." The response was terse, restrained, but powerful. Not bad. That interaction summed up the entire emotional journey of the weekend, a cycle that went from frustration to mental mastery. From the pit lane, Verstappen knew there was no room for error. What Red Bull had rebuilt overnight had to work from the very first lap. As the lights went out, the Dutchman set off aggressively, taking advantage of the clean air at the start to gain time as the leading group bunched up. Within just a few corners, the strategic decision made the day before was already showing results. The RB21 was stable, more agile, and responded to every change of direction with precision. But fate had another challenge in store. On lap 3, a small piece of carbon fiber at the first corner punctured his right front tire. The puncture forced an immediate pit stop under the virtual safety car. At that moment, the original plan fell apart, and the team had to improvise. Instead of going back to hard tires as planned, Red Bull opted for a fresh set of mediums. It was a bold and, unbeknownst to them, perfect decision. That compound matched the track temperature ideally, offering a consistent and controllable performance window. From that point on, the pit wall strategy was completely rewritten. Every overtake was measured, avoiding excessive wear and unnecessary risks. Lambiase communicated the gaps with mathematical precision, and Verstappen responded with surgical accuracy. The RB21, at that point, behaved like an extension of his instincts. What seemed like a lost weekend transformed into a methodical comeback, sustained by rational decisions under pressure. As the race entered its final stages, Red Bull faced a dilemma that would divide opinions even after the checkered flag. Verstappen was in a position to lead, but telemetry data showed accelerated degradation on the medium tires. Lando Norris was closing in on fresh tires, and the risk of losing everything was real. Mekies and Lambiase discussed the situation in real time, evaluating every possible variable. Finally, the order was clear: pit and put on new soft tires. In just 9 laps, he overtook George Russell and reduced the gap to Kimi Antonelli to less than half a second at the finish line. He finished third, but what remained etched in memory was the flawless execution of a plan born from chaos. As the race entered its critical phase, the Red Bull pit wall faced a dilemma. Verstappen was leading, but the telemetry monitors told a different story. The medium tires were starting to wear, the pace was degrading by more than a second per lap, and the gap to Lando Norris was closing dangerously. The tension on the pit wall was palpable. Mekies analyzed the data with the engineering team while Lambiase kept Verstappen informed with short, measured sentences. Every lap became a constant risk assessment. The dilemma was clear: try to reach the end with exhausted tires and risk the podium, or pit once again, relinquish the lead, and gamble on a final attack. It was a tactical decision that defined not only the result but also the philosophy of a team that prefers to ensure consistent performance rather than chase fleeting glory. The order came at the perfect moment. Box, Max box. Plan C. Verstappen entered the pits without hesitation, knowing that this call could cost him the victory. In the garage, the change was flawless. New softs, balanced fuel tank, and no margin for error. When he returned to the track, he dropped to 4th position, but his pace was immediately superior to the cars ahead. In less than 10 laps, Verstappen overtook Russell and set his sights on Kimi Antonelli, finishing less than half a second shy of snatching second place at the finish line. He didn't win, but his performance was a masterclass in strategy and execution under pressure. When he crossed the finish line, the silence on the radio lasted a few seconds. Then, Lambiase's voice broke the tension. "I never thought I'd be saying this, Max, but you came from the pit lane to lead the race." The response was concise and restrained. Not bad. Those 3 words summed up the spirit of the weekend. Mekies, in the post-race press conference, explained that the decision to make the final pit stop wasn't an act of giving up, but a precise calculation based on tire degradation and the reality of lap times. Red Bull didn't go for emotion, they went for logic. In technical terms, the Interlagos weekend was an extreme laboratory. The car demonstrated an over-reliance on its aerodynamic window, a working range that was too narrow and collapsed with any variation in ride height or temperature. Engineers discovered that the car's floor, both the new and previous versions, failed to generate the stable airflow the package needed to produce consistent downforce. But beyond the numbers and setups, the biggest lesson was human. The connection between Verstappen and Lambiase demonstrated that communication can be the backbone of a team, even when technology fails. Mekies, for his part, consolidated a leadership style distinct from the previous Red Bull era, less authoritarian, more reflective, and focused on collective trust. That emotional balance was the fuel that sustained the comeback. The combination of technical analysis and human resilience turned a predicted defeat into a moral victory. Red Bull understood that performance isn't measured solely in lap times, but in a team's ability to remain calm when everything is falling apart. And at Interlagos, they showed that even when the championship seems lost, determination and learning can be as valuable as a victory. The final message from Brazil is clear and profound. In a category where every thousandth of a second counts, Red Bull demonstrated that the human factor remains the most powerful differentiator. Resilience, communication, and an emotional understanding of the moment were the weapons that transformed frustration into results. Verstappen didn't just drive a rebuilt car, he drove the narrative of a team that refused to give up. And that mentality will define their season finale in Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. The championship may be mathematically all but decided, but prestige and sporting authority continue to be built with every decision, every pit stop, and every radio message. Now the question is inevitable. Can Red Bull turn the lessons learned in Brazil into symbolic victories to close the year with pride? Leave your opinion in the comments. Was this weekend the clearest display of maturity from Verstappen and his team, or simply a warning to those who thought he was finished? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.